So why don't we call the meeting of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents to order and begin with recognitions. President Kaler.
Let's go. Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Regents, it's my pleasure and honor to recognize our newest Regent Professor, Robina Chair in Law, Public Policy and Society, the Faculty Director of our Human Rights Center, and Professor of Law, Finola Ni Aline. Established in 1965 by the Board of Regents to recognize the national and international prominence of faculty members, the Regents Professorship is the highest honor the University of Minnesota bestows upon its faculty. It recognizes faculty members who have made unique contributions to the quality of the University of Minnesota through exceptional accomplishments in teaching, research, and scholarship or creative work, and contributions to the public good. With Professor Ni Aline's selection, there's a full complement of 30 Regents professors, and in the history of the program, amongst the thousands of scholars who have taught and created new knowledge at our university over the past half-century, only 101 have been named Regents professors. It is truly a rare honor, and she is most deserving. Our newest Regents professor is considered one of the world's leading scholars on the topics of conflict resolution and gender-based violence in conflict. Her research addresses the application of national security law to regulating terrorism, resolving accountability in political disputes in post-conflict societies, peace building, and transitional justice. Her contributions to the feminist analysis of international law are considered groundbreaking, and the disciplines of law, political science, and public policy have all been shaped by her contributions. Long affiliated with the United Nations, earlier this summer she was named the UN's Special Rapporteur. That's a fun word. I don't use that word very often. On the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism. Professor Ni Aline joined our faculty in 2004, has served as an Associate Dean of the Law School, and is also an affiliated faculty member in the Departments of Political Science in our College of Liberal Arts. In her spare time, she is co-director of the University of Ulster's Transition Justice Institute in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Professor Ni Aline has an outstanding publication record, and her first book, entitled The Politics of Force, has been considered instrumental in the peace process in Northern Ireland. Since 2010, she has served as chair of the Women's Rights Program of the Open Society Foundation, which has distributed approximately $8 million annually to advance women's rights around the world. She clearly exemplifies in an extraordinary way the qualities of teaching, scholarship, and public engagement that are true to our mission and that the Regents Professorship requires. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our newest and very deserving Regents Professor. Congratulations.
So I'm really privileged to accept this position as Regents Professor at the University of Minnesota. I owe gratitude and thanks both to President Kaler and the Board of Regents as a whole for this extraordinarily honor. And it's also it's so exceptional to have this level of confidence in the work that I do. I spent much of my childhood in a small town in the west of Ireland. It had a population of about 130, and I woke up and spoke Gaelic every day, a language that's only spoken by a very small minority of people on the island. My studies at 16 brought me to Canada, and from there I went to the Queen's University of Belfast in Northern Ireland at the height of the conflict to study law. My influences were extensive, but I was propelled by the violence, the complexity and the challenges of the harms that I saw around me, and it drove me to focus intensively on addressing the causalities of violence, the conditions that produce violence, and the rights of those affected by violence, and ultimately for the need to have local, regional and global infrastructures to address inequality, structural discrimination, and to bring about conflict transformation. I had the great privilege to work at the War Crimes Tribunal in Bosnia-Herzegovina throughout the war, and I spent a number of years as a faculty member on the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's faculty in Jerusalem. So conflict follows me, or maybe I follow conflict as the motif of my life's work. But in all of these places, long before I knew Minnesota, it was present to me. The work of the Human Rights Center, particularly through its global online human rights library, was a constant source and companion in all of those places. And with it, Minnesota's global reputation in human rights. And so many years later, when I was visiting Princeton University with my husband, Oren, who's here today, we were invited to Minnesota, and there was a familiarity and substance to this place in the middle of the plains, even though that wouldn't have been necessarily obvious to any external observer. The law school and the university has rightly earned that global and national reputation. We have, and I hope that we will through my work, particularly now as the UN Special Rapporteur for Counterterrorism, as well as this incredible depth of faculty capacity at the university, we will continue to be the best kind of exemplar for global engagement in human rights at this university. Informed, incisive, interdisciplinary insights and solutions. And echoing perhaps one of the motifs of our Grand Challenges program that I've been really proud to be associated with, we will have the solutions to some of the most difficult and challenging issues of our time. I owe much to the law school and to this university for its deep commitment to my work and this kind of work. I also want to acknowledge personally my thanks and love to my husband, Oren, who's sitting right here in the audience. He's a member of the law school faculty, for his trenchant support and belief in the work that I do, notwithstanding its challenges and also its dangers. Let me conclude by saying 2 weeks ago I was in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Having obtained security clearance, I traveled to observe the 9/11 pretrial for Sheikh Khalid Mohammed and 4 others. One of my students came with me, a young, extraordinary woman from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And my dean fully supported my going, and her, although he wanted to be sure I'd look after her and she'd come back. So that in that work I could do the work of documenting and theorizing, as I do wherever I go to any conflict zone or place dealing with exigencies of terrorism and violence. Now, in those places, not only do I represent Minnesota, but my students and my colleagues who come with me are also extending the vision of this university in the process. I'm so honored and so humbled by your confidence in me, but I'm also so pleased that I can continue this incredible tradition, this global and national tradition that the University of Minnesota has in extending a vision of human rights throughout the world. Thank you very much.
It's now our pleasure to recognize the University of Minnesota's libraries under the leadership of University Librarian and McKnight Presidential Professor Wendy Pratt-Luget. Wendy, would you please join me? Thank you. We have indisputably one of the greatest libraries archives, and collections anywhere in the world. Our library's leadership and staff own a remarkable record of serving Minnesota and a global community of students and scholars. Our public programming is second to none. Our powerful Treater collection in GLBT studies is widely known, and our Givens collection of African American literature led to the birth of Umbra Search, the search engine for African American history for use around the world. Our libraries extend the reach of the university through many partnerships, such as the work they've done with Professor Erica Lee on her immigration stories and immigration syllabus projects. Our growing data repository for University of Minnesota, or DRUM, allows our researchers' data to be shared and reused by researchers worldwide. And our libraries bring our university around the world and invite our statewide community to our campuses. More than 20% of the people who visit the libraries are not affiliated with the university, but are younger learners for History Day, faculty from other colleges, and just regular Minnesota citizens who are lifelong learners and researchers. And then there's Minitext, our extraordinary partnership with the state of Minnesota, which distributes materials from our libraries across the state and to libraries on other campuses. Our libraries engage in what Wendy calls timely access and timeless knowledge. And that's why our university libraries this year won the National Medal for Museum and Library Service, the highest honor for a library. Congratulations and thank you to University Librarian Luget and her entire team for all you do at the University of Minnesota. And now Board Chair McMillan will read the certificate of recognition.
Thank you, President Kaler and Professor Luget. Before I read this, I'll just comment we had a great presentation yesterday in our Mission Fulfillment Committee that you heard the accolades of the board there, but I was left with one great takeaway from that, and that was your line that nobody ever graduated from a library, but no one ever graduated without a library. So that one's been resonating in my head and even applied to me in my days at UMD, I think. Without the library there, I might not be here today. So here we are, Certificate of Recognition, University of Minnesota Libraries. The Regents of the University of Minnesota recognize and celebrate the exceptional achievement of the University of Minnesota Libraries as a recipient of the 2017 National Medal for Museum and Library Service, the highest honor bestowed upon museums and libraries for service to the community. The award celebrates institutions that respond to societal needs in innovative ways and make a difference for individuals, families, and their communities. The University of Minnesota Libraries is only the third academic library to receive this award in its 23-year history. With 12 library facilities, a collection of 8 million volumes, and special collections valued at nearly $1 billion, the University Libraries develops, supports traditional and innovative services that engage university students, faculty, staff, and community in their pursuit of knowledge. University Libraries reaches beyond campus borders to develop and deliver high-demand services and programs to Minnesota's 5.5 million residents. On behalf of the entire university community, the Regents of the University of Minnesota express their deepest congratulations to the University of Minnesota Libraries for receiving this prestigious award presented this 8th day of September 2017.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yesterday she was very... Yeah. Yeah.
It's now my pleasure to invite Provost Karen Hansen to the podium for two other introductions.
Thank you, President Kaler. Chair McMillan and members of the board, I am very pleased to introduce two new deans today. First, the new dean of the College of Design, Carol Strohecker. Dean Strohecker is an innovative and effective leader with impressive experience advancing interdisciplinary research, education, and creative work. She was most recently Vice Provost for Academic Affairs at the Rhode Island School of Design, or RISD, in Providence, Rhode Island. And previously, she was the inaugural director of the Center for Design Innovation, a multi-campus research and design center of the University of North Carolina's School of the Arts. At RISD, she led the assessment of academic programs in arts and design, worked with faculty and students to improve academic policies supporting student progress, and contributed to the development of a campus master plan. She also co-directed an interdisciplinary dual degree program with Brown University and collaborated to seed or strengthen cross-institutional research and community engagement initiatives. In her prior position at the University of North Carolina, she led the Center for Design Innovation to national prominence as an applied research hub advancing the knowledge economy and creative industries in north-central North Carolina. She held concurrent roles as the center's chief research officer and as a tenured professor in art and visual studies at the North Carolina School of the Arts in Winston-Salem. Dean Strohecker holds a PhD in Media Arts and Sciences from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She's published and presented widely on topics related to learning theory and the development of environments in which people can learn through creative processes. Her portfolio includes many creative works in various media, as well as collaborative work in interactive media that has netted 4 U.S. patents. We're confident that the breadth of leadership experience and the strengths in interdisciplinary research and creative work will advance our excellent College of Design, and I'm delighted to welcome her to the University of Minnesota. So, Carol, will you please say a few words?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm new to Minnesota, but as a graduate of 2 land-grant universities, I feel a kind of homecoming here, and I feel an affinity with these students. So I'm honored to be here and delighted to be working with a group of highly talented people in the College of Design. I'm confident we can move forward so that profile will become increasingly prominent. I'm very excited to be here, grateful for the leadership of Provost Hanson, President Kaler, and the Regents. Thank you.
Thank you, my paper.
Next, please welcome the new Dean of the College of Pharmacy, Dr. Linda Wellich. Dean Wellich brings to the University of Minnesota extensive experience as a collaborative academic leader and an accomplished translational researcher, educator, and pharmacy practitioner. She comes to us from the College of Pharmacy at the University of New Mexico, Albuquerque, where she was the dean and a professor of pharmacy practice and administrative sciences. Previously, she was a professor, clinical pharmacist, and associate dean for academic affairs at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And there she also served in leadership roles with the Michigan Institute for Clinical and Health Research. As dean at New Mexico, she oversaw the development of innovative educational and practice models, as well as growth in the College of Pharmacy's research program and initiatives to improve the health of local and global communities. Under her leadership, that college completed a strategic plan, updated the PharmD curriculum to enhance interprofessional education and practice, and launched a dual PharmD MS program in pharmaceutical sciences. She also strengthened faculty mentoring programs, including initiatives for faculty of color in the health sciences. Dr. Wellich, who earned her Doctor of Pharmacy degree from the State University of New York at Buffalo, Division of Clinical Pharmacy, is a nationally known expert on critical care and drug absorption. She's published and presented extensively on issues related to alterations in intestinal transport processes during acute inflammatory states. She's on the American College of Clinical Pharmacy's Board of Trustees, is a member of the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy's Council of Deans Task Force on Population Health, and is a fellow of the American College of Clinical Pharmacy. Dr. Wellich brings to the College of Pharmacy outstanding leadership experience and research accomplishments, and we're confident she will further enhance the quality, impact, and reputation of the college. Please join me in welcoming her to the University of Minnesota. So, Linda, could you say a few words?
Thank you for the kind introduction. University Regents, President Kaler, Provost Hanson, and others here today, I want you all to know I am honored to serve as Dean of the University of Minnesota College of Pharmacy. As you may know, the College of Pharmacy is committed to improving health through innovative education, pioneering research, and interdisciplinary practice development to meet the needs, in particular, and I will stress, the diverse needs of the people of Minnesota as well as across the world. While we're proud of our #2 ranking among the 142 schools of pharmacy across the nation, we continue to strive for excellence in preparing the next generation of future pharmacy providers and leaders, developing and promoting new interdisciplinary approaches to healthcare, and conducting cutting-edge research that includes discovering and developing new drugs. We also tackle issues of health disparities, medication therapy management, health economics, and health policy as we strive to become the top pharmacy school in the country. If you're not familiar with the College of Pharmacy, I invite you over to learn more about us. I have also left a brochure on the table there that highlights some of our programs, and feel free to pick it up. I want to thank you for your warm welcome, and I'm honored to be here and partner with others at this great institution. Thank you.
That's what we're just talking about. We're just talking about. I'm in the board. That's right. Talking about we're a smaller firm.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, it's my pleasure to introduce the new chair of our Faculty Consultative Committee, Professor Joe Constant. Joe, would you please join me? The FCC is, of course, the university's lead faculty committee that regularly consults with me, that represents faculty system-wide, and is the Faculty Senate's executive committee. And the FCC chair reports regularly to the Board of Regents. Joe is a professor of computer science and engineering and is an adjunct professor of public health. He joined our faculty in 1992, and among his many honors, he has been named a distinguished McKnight University professor and a distinguished university teaching professor. His research addresses a variety of human-computer interaction issues, including designing computer systems to improve public health. Joe is a wonderful university citizen, and I look forward to working with him in these months to come. Professor, welcome. Would you like to say a few words?
So, thank you very much, President Kaler, members of the board. They didn't tell me if this was a 50 or 75-minute lecture, so I'll go with the short version. Governance at the University of Minnesota is serious business. It's also a tremendous pleasure and delight. Being in an institution where the administration from top to bottom takes the input of faculty, but also of staff and of students remarkably seriously, and uses that input to help shape the direction of the institution is not just a wonderful thing, but it's really the reason we are such a strong university, a leader in education, a leader in research, and a leader in public service and outreach. And I just want to add my gratitude to my wonderful colleagues across all of the university, the many colleges, and our system campuses who have, through this process, handed me their trust to continue representing them as effectively as I possibly can as we go forward in the mission of making this continue to be a great institution. Thank you.
Straight shooter. Respectful.
That's it.
Good people. Good people. Wait, 140.
I think so. Okay.
Yeah, no, please do. I have to see. I hope not.
All right, thank you, President Kaler, and deans and professors. A great way to start a meeting, recognizing our academic excellence here and our commitment to shared governance. So I would entertain at this point a motion and a second to approve the minutes from our July meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Yes, Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A quick comment, and then I actually have an amendment real quick. I think that we're doing a really good job. I always get a little concerned when we have the minutes say that in response to a question by Regent so-and-so. I think they're doing a pretty good job now of ensuring that the answer makes it pretty obvious what the question was, and so I want to thank the office for doing that, because sometimes different questions would yield a certain answer, and I think it's important that there's fidelity to what is being asked. I would ask on page 25 in the conversation regarding the delegation of authority considerations at the meeting, there's the third to the bottom paragraph. It states that that in reference to myself, he suggested that the board is reluctant to exercise oversight and emphasize the importance of reviewing large employment contracts to ensure proper hiring decisions. I think that's a paraphrasing, but it gives the impression that I'm talking about the wisdom of a particular individual, their qualifications, and so on and so forth, when really the point was much more about the financial exposure. So I would move to amend the minutes to strike all after contracts, the part that says to ensure proper hiring decisions. I think if we strike that, it accurately reflects the conversation without giving that impression.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Discussion? I support that change. Hearing no discussion, let's vote on the amendment and then adopt the minutes as corrected. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very good. Now we have the original motion with the amended minutes as reflected by Regent Rocha. Mr. Steves, do you have that? Very good. Then let's vote on the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. The minutes are adopted, and I turn to our president for the report of President Kaler.
Thank you, Chair McMillan, and good morning, everyone. When the calendar turns to September and when our new students begin moving into the residence halls, and when I have the delight of hearing and singing the rouser and we hand out syllabi, there's nothing like the excitement of a new academic year for me, and I know for you as well. We're here because of our students, and when they return in full force, the energy they bring to our university is unmistakable. And for us, it's a reminder that the business of keeping our university great is about ensuring the best possible experience for all 60,000 plus of our students in Crookston, Duluth, Morris, Rochester, and here on the Twin Cities campus. And with that in mind, let me review where we stand on some initiatives, update you on my reaction to some recent news, and report to you on recent work while I share what's on tap in the weeks to come. First, under the leadership of School of Public Health Dean John Finnegan, we're moving forward with my president's initiative to prevent sexual misconduct, and this is very important to me. Key issues were also echoed in the independent report issued last month to the Special Oversight Committee. We're responding to them, and even members of the public and the news media are recognizing our progress. Over the summer, Dean Finnegan and a broad range of stakeholders, faculty, staff, and students have been working hard to develop a comprehensive plan to deliver to me by my deadline, which is October 2nd. There is no silver bullet here, as you know, but we're building on an already good foundation, and we want to and we must do even better. My initiative envisions a university that promotes a culture of health and wellness in relationships, that's committed to due process, and that's safe and free from sexual misconduct. That's why I selected Dean Finnegan to lead this effort, because in the end, culture change will develop from a positive public health framework. You should know that Alan Berkowitz, a national leader in guiding institutions towards solutions to sexual misconduct, will be visiting the Twin Cities campus on September 19th and meeting with faculty, staff, and student leaders. As you know, earlier this week, a decision was made in Washington to end in March the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. I joined a chorus of local and national higher education and business leaders in expressing disappointment in that decision, and I am, of course, especially concerned for the young people registered in the program who are our students. Those in the DACA program are valued members of our community and have called Minnesota home in many cases for most of their lives. I remind you that despite the federal government's action, the Minnesota DREAM Act remains a state law that was adopted by the Board of Regents as the official policy for the University of Minnesota campus. But I want to take time today and emphasize that this decision has deep business implications here in our state. For the last year, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, for example, has been touring the state, educating local chambers on the facts of our state workforce. One of those facts is that we have an aging workforce. We have a critical need for educated workers, and equally important, our workforce is increasingly dependent on in-migration of new Minnesotans, whether from other states or from other countries. Higher education at every level helps to prepare that workforce, and we are partners with our business community in urging our congressional delegation to work to extend DACA to protect students and their families and to keep the promise of opportunity for young people who want to lift themselves up with world-class college education and a good job. On a few other matters, I've begun meeting with legislators to discuss our capital request for the 2018 legislative session, to emphasize to them the impact this great university has in all 87 counties and to drive home our affordability. You may have seen recent stories about the cost of private colleges in Minnesota and others on the debt load of students. Let me remind you that about 40% of all of our undergraduates system-wide and 43% of our graduates here on the Twin Cities campus graduate with no government-secured debt. And because of our comprehensive financial aid program, almost every student from a family earning less than $50,000 a year can attend our university tuition-free. And I'm proud of that. I recently visited Winona and Red Wing to make our case, and that's just the start of our outreach, led by Vice President Matt Kramer and State Government Relations Director J.D. Burton. I also had the pleasure of spending time with U.S. Congressmember Betty McCollum, who toured with me our spectacular and almost finished new Bell Museum on the St. Paul campus, and that will be open to the public next summer. Most of you were in 3M Arena and Mariucci last week at the convocation of our incoming Twin Cities class, the largest first-year class in 47 years. I think you'll agree it was a fun and emotional event, and I trust today you're all wearing your memorial t-shirts in fond memory. Not only is our Twin Cities class the largest, but without all the official data in, we believe that our system's entire first-year enrollment will be the largest in 30 years, and our Rochester incoming class is the largest ever. So we are in demand, and we're filling seats across the system. Of course, our system campuses this semester are also experiencing new leadership. Chancellor Michelle Baer of Morris and Chancellor Mary Holt Claus of Crookston are in charge for their first full semesters. And Lori Carroll is our new interim chancellor in Rochester, and I'm very pleased to welcome these new members to our leadership team. I'm looking forward especially to visiting Morris on September 29th when Chancellor Baer is officially inaugurated, and you are all invited. Meanwhile, I want to congratulate our Vice President for Equity and Diversity, Catrice Albert, who is leaving the University of Minnesota to become Executive Vice President of Inclusion and Human Resources for the National Collegiate Athletic Association, the NCAA. Dr. Albert joined the university in 2013 and has been a key partner in addressing the challenging and important work around equity and diversity. I'm grateful for her service and contributions, and it will be great to have a Gopher in such a role at the NCAA. Finally, board staff will now distribute my work plan and goals for the coming year. From finalizing our system-wide strategic plan to achieving the long-standing vision for integrated academic medicine to digitally supporting our philanthropic efforts, my work plan is focused and ambitious, and I look forward to working closely in this academic year with you to benefit our students and to promote the excellence and reputation of our great university. Thank you.
Thank you, President Kaler. And for my report, I'll start by noting that I haven't had any feedback yet other than a quick comment from President Kaler about new chairs, and I don't mean chairs of committees. Are they more comfortable? All right. Yeah, I had to coax that one out of you, but anyway, you do note new additions to the room, and we've made a few changes, including a safety rail over on one side, room for our student representatives, and of course new chairs. So, sitting in one of those new chairs, I also want to recognize a former member of the Board of Regents, I believe. Regent Emeritus Tom Devine's out there, so welcome, Tom. Nice to see you here. And now, welcome to the students. Echoing what President Kaler said a few minutes ago, we've got 5 campuses full of new and returning students, and that's exciting for the board and exciting for the university, and it really underscores why we are here. It's a new year for the board as well, and as you saw yesterday and this morning, new committee structures coming to life. And I want to stop for a minute and just recognize the extraordinary amount of effort involved really on 3 parts, thanking the people who have stepped up as members of the Board of Regents to chair and vice chair those new committees, and the 2 that remain from before. That's important. Brian Steves and his team put in probably the most time of anybody trying to make sure as we try a new approach and explore different ways to get our business done more effectively. They are here a lot trying to make sure that works, and very, very importantly and lastly, President Kaler and his senior team that work with our committees. Change is never easy, but I hope what you witnessed yesterday and we all experienced is something that matches President Kaler's org chart well, and will enable us to continue to continuously improve how we approach the governance process. And as you witness this meeting, which doesn't have a work plan, so to speak, for the actual board meetings on Fridays, I would say our work plan's driven really by our 5 strategic priorities, and I'm going to take just a minute to walk through those. These were set at our July retreat, and they should echo throughout every one of these meetings, often not all of them, and sometimes just one, but often 1, 2, or 3. And the first is preserve and enhance the university's academic excellence and reputation. Second, drive impact to the university's land grant mission through access, inclusion, and student success. Third, achieve a vision for an integrated academic medical enterprise. Fourth, complete a system-wide strategic plan, which we'll hear about in a minute, that incorporates an academic investment strategy and long-term financial framework. And finally, this board is driven to increase private and public support for the university's mission. More to come on that in a couple agenda items down the way. So thanks again to everybody who's helped bring this new committee structure to bear, and I want to make a very heartfelt, open offer to get feedback. So tell me how it's going, tell my 11 colleagues on the board, tell Brian, and we're here to learn and improve at all times. Busy, exciting year ahead. With that, I'm going to conclude my report and call on Regent Johnson, former chair of the board and the person who chaired the Presidential Performance Review Committee, to provide a report of that committee.
Thank you, Regent McMillan, members of the board, and university community. The 2017 Presidential Performance Review Committee included Regent McMillan, Regent Simmons, and myself. We convened our first meeting as a committee in late May and concluded our work on July 14th during a meeting with President Kaler. In accordance with state statutes, our meetings were closed. We spent a great deal of time gathering input from regents, university senior leaders, faculty and student leadership, external stakeholders, as well as donors. Our report has been distributed to the board and is now being made available to the public, and I'd like to highlight a few items that appear in this report. First, Mr. President, philanthropy continues to be a strength, with the fiscal year 2017 the second highest fundraising year to date. Secondly, under your leadership, the university secured critical facilities, including UMD's Chemistry and Advanced Material Sciences CAMS building and the Health Sciences building on the Twin City campus. And President Kaler, you have improved the structure of your senior leadership team, making strong new hires in very, very key areas, and many of them are present here today. The committee also identified several priorities and future challenges for the President, including repositioning the university's clinical enterprise. Secondly, articulating a vision for the university through the completion of the system-wide strategic plan and long-term financial plan. Thirdly, strengthening relationships with stakeholders across the state. Fourthly, continuing to build capacity of your senior leadership team and building the university's image by improving crisis communications and public relations. Mr. President, overall, we remain optimistic that you and your team are well positioned to take us into the future challenges. That concludes my formal portion of the report, and I just offer this, Mr. President, and I've had discussions informally with colleagues and people in the university community, and my sense is this, Mr. President: the University of Minnesota is on the upswing. We're in a good place. We have areas of improvement for all of us, but I think that the perception among the public and many of us who sit around the table and those who are gathered here today, we're in a good place. Yes, we have challenges, and we're committed to work with you and your administration. So that concludes my report on the Presidential Review Committee, Mr. President and Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Johnson, and I also want to, again, thank you for your leadership of this process. Thank Regent Patty Simmons for joining us and me, and that made up the three-person committee, and thank the board for the input that we received by expanding that process at a couple key points. Regent Simmons.
Thank you, and it was a privilege to serve on behalf of the board on the Performance Review Committee. The board members were terrific at engaging because they care deeply and know how important it is that we assess the performance of the president and provide feedback to the president. But also we had members from the broader community, from the university itself and the broader community who contributed this year, and I think it helped us build a much more clear picture than just what we at the board see of the accomplishments of this president and the accomplishments of the university to its mission. I would like to add one other point, and that is during the search for the president, this one won, he noticed that the offer came only after we had met Mrs. Kaler. And he sometimes characterizes himself as the trailing spouse. And having been part of that search, I would like to let you know that indeed he is the trailing spouse. And I'd like to acknowledge the extraordinary commitment, accomplishments, and value Karen Kaler has brought to this university.
Thank you, Regent Simmons, and thank you, Karen Kaler, for your endless and tireless support of this university and your ambassadorship. Thank you for adding that. Moving on, I'm going to receive and file reports, noting what is in your docket. Regent Simmons.
Mr. Chair, people usually don't comment about these reports, but I'd like to make a little comment and request, actually. When you look at the year-to-date financial performance, that is the revenue we've received for research, it's concerning because our governmental funding, if I'm reading this correctly, and that would be predominantly federal, but also state and some local government, that funding is down $36 million from last year for the first half of this year. I think that's a very concerning number. And I would like to ask that at our next discussion of research, when there's a presentation, we hear about the implications of that sort of a dramatic decrease and what we see coming down the pike in the future. So that's request number one. I think it's serious and it'll be really important for us to understand it. The second request I have is that when we hear a presentation on research next, I would love to see it be broadened to have some qualitative information as well. We have extraordinary discovery going on in multiple areas of the university. Not all of them receive high levels of research funding, but the impact can be extraordinary on the delivery of the mission. I wonder if we could expand what we hear.
Very well pointed out. We shouldn't do drive-bys of any of this stuff. It's important, and I think Regional Omari and yourself, from a mission fulfillment standpoint, can consider where that would fit in the research piece. And as we heard this morning, obviously our finance and operations piece in support of missions fulfillment could probably help with the quantitative side of that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Moving on past the receiving and filing of reports, I would entertain a motion to receive the consent report, but before doing so, I will note that two items in the summary of gifts are gifts from General Mills, Board Vice Chair, and Regent Powell has recused himself from voting on this matter due to his position at General Mills. Is there a motion to approve the consent report?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. The consent report is adopted, and now, as promised, we would take up one of our strategic priorities, and I'll turn it over to President Kaler here to share his thinking and seek feedback on next steps in the system-wide strategic plan conversation. President Kaler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We now turn to a key priority of mine and yours for the coming year, and that's finalizing a system-wide strategic plan that drives much of what we do on all of our campuses and will do so for the foreseeable future. Because of its importance, I will lead this process personally. My Chief of Staff, John Stedland, will be a member of an oversight committee, as I'll detail for you in a moment, and my Deputy Chief of Staff, Julie Christensen, will be the key staff person on this. And when our work is completed, it will direct us to many decisions on what we teach, how we do research, the nature of our public engagement, and set the foundation for our budget. Let me start by reviewing for you how we got here and then where we will be headed over the next 12 months, and I'll outline a process and a detailed timeline. First, how we got here. In October of 2016, I charged a 30-member system-wide strategic planning committee led by former UMR Chancellor Lemkuhl and Vice Provost Ropers-Hillman to develop a plan over the 2016-17 academic year. And its goal is to benefit students and citizens across the state by embracing a system-wide perspective. With Steve and Rebecca in the lead, this committee listened, synthesized, affirmed, and developed a document that became a system-wide strategic framework. I think we can agree that they performed extraordinary service in consulting with all the key stakeholders across the system, and we owe them thanks. What they produced demands that, to borrow Steve Lemkuhl's term, we think about our, quote, systemness. And to guide us, the framework they presented to this board last June and that you approved included a number of recommended next steps. Among them were a new system-wide administrative structure, system-wide thinking better integrated into the budget process, and better system-wide recruitment and admissions processes. Each of those alone is a heavy lift, but we need to address them head-on and tackle other recommendations in that framework document. And as we move down that path, the University of Minnesota won't be a world of independent contractors, but we will truly be one system. So today we begin to pivot from how to think about our systemness to actually setting our system-wide priorities. And in essence, we will move from how to what. First, we need to consult with deans and chancellors, and they with their faculty and staff. With all of them, we need to enter into conversations about collegiate and campus priorities. We also need to step back and continue to seek input from others, such as the governor and the legislature, to invite and assess their thinking as we bring our system closer together. And that's because we need to determine going forward how we will fit into the higher education mosaic in our state and in some cases the region. As we examine all we do on all of our campuses, we must determine what we should be doing in the years to come and where we fit in the ecosystem and marketplace that includes Minnesota State University and the excellent private colleges in the state. And we also, and this is critically important, ask the fundamental question, where do we invest in excellence? And its companion question, where can we pull back? We're going to ask, are there some things we're missing that we should be doing? And we assess how all of this fits into our budget and finance structure. As we do all of the hard work on teaching, research, and public engagement, we need a timeline that fits into our 2018-19 biennial request. So we need to make decisions by September of 18 so that when you review the biennial budget request for 18-19, our system-wide strategic vision will be reflected in that budget request for the 2019 legislative session. We will see how we will partner with the legislature to support our operations and maintenance with this enhanced system-wide approach. We will see what level of support for students and their families is at stake, what sort of investments in our facilities are needed across the system, and what investments and initiatives such as MnDrive and the health sciences could mean to us as we look not just to the Twin Cities research enterprise, but across our system. So with that, let me suggest a structure to the process, a more specific timeline, and some deliverables. First, the structure. As I mentioned, I will chair a strategic planning oversight committee. We will come into 5 focus areas with leadership teams responsible for the key areas from the strategic framework you previously approved. These areas, of course, generally match the core elements of our mission. The focus areas will likely seek recommendations from some ad hoc work groups, and all the recommendations will flow back up to the Oversight Committee and to me. I will make final decisions on what the system-wide strategic plan looks like and bring that to you. So here's how the structure looks. As you can see here, the Oversight Committee will be composed of key senior leaders, including all of our chancellors. It's critically important that we have input from the leaders of our system campuses, and extensive consultation across the system will be critical. 5 university leaders will lead the focus areas. And before we turn there to those areas, Mr. Chair and members of the board, yesterday during our conversation on enrollment management, many of the presenters used language that was developed in the system-wide strategic framework. As we've begun our work on the full plan, and as we've been consulting with many stakeholders, we decided for clarity to use language that more aligns with our long-standing mission, more conventional terms. So as I proceed here, you'll see that what the framework called Learners and Leaders has come to the tried and true teaching and learning. Scholarship and creative work is research and discovery, and community partnerships is our more typical outreach and public service. A little old school, but I think a little more clear. Let me turn now to our first focus area, research and discovery. This focus area will examine, among other issues, research alignment among OVPR and academic units system-wide, assess the work of the Grand Challenges research projects, and how faculty connections can be strengthened. I envision work groups developing from these various issues in each focus area. Next will be outreach and public service, led by University Relations Vice President Matt Kramer. This focus area will examine another key pillar of our mission, working to better coordinate our public engagement across the system and the state. In particular, I will ask Vice President Kramer to engage with our leaders in St. Paul to better understand their perspectives on the place of the University of Minnesota. Then there's teaching and learning, led by Provost Karen Hansen. The focus area will dive into, among other things, system-wide enrollment management, recruitment strategies, and online education. Of course, medicine and health is an essential piece of our impact around the state because we prepare the vast majority of healthcare professionals and because of our literally hundreds of clinical affiliations. As part of the system-wide strategic planning process, we'll need to promote a vision for a statewide integrated academic medicine partnership that values research and sharpens our relationship with our clinical enterprise. And achieving our long-standing vision for integrated academic medicine, building the future structure of our health science enterprise and its partnership, and working diligently to improve the reputation of our medical school, all of those are central components of my work plan for the coming year. Our final focus area is called Supporting the Mission, and it's led by our Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations, Brian Burnett. And frankly, this is where the rubber will meet the road for the entire process. Because in the end, our system-wide strategic plan will find its life in our biennial budget request for 2018-19. So that's what our process and the structure will look like, and I'm eager for your feedback on that. But let me turn first to a timeline. We're previewing today goals, process, and this timeline, and next month we'll engage in what I call a level-setting discussion, so we'll know exactly as a board where we stand on previously completed strategic planning work on each of our campuses and across the system, and we'll identify themes that run through those plans. Our tentative plan is to devote each board meeting between February and July of 18 to one of these focus areas, and so we will work with you as we set agendas for those meetings. So we're leading an extremely detailed and serious examination of our system and where we should be headed. In addition, I believe regular meetings of the board's mission fulfillment and finance and operations committees can be used for work group or other specialized topics that may arise. It's essential that 1 year from today, when we meet for our September 2018 board meeting, we'll have draft system-wide strategic plans to review alongside your first review of the 2019 biennial budget request. And by October of 2018, we should have a final system-wide strategic plan to coincide with approval of the 2019 biennial budget request. So, Mr. Chair and members of the board, the work, of course, has begun, and I'm thankful for the work last year that created the framework that guides us. For this year's effort, my staff has begun to communicate with our chancellors, and we're reaching out to deans on our Twin Cities campus, and then the first stage of level setting will begin in our next board meeting, as I mentioned. So in closing, to understand the progress and power of any institution, there need to be clear measurements and guideposts, and of course we already have many of these in place. We have a 6-year capital plan. We have our progress card. We have individual campus strategic plans. We have our annual university plan performance accountability report. We have a transparent budgeting process. But now we're embarking on a serious and challenging approach to a system-wide vision and ultimately a comprehensive system-wide strategic plan. I look forward to leading this effort and driving it in a thoughtful way, but also making tough choices as we go forward. And when we're done, it's my hope will bring us together in all of our other tools with a strategic plan overlapping all of them for the system, and we'll move forward in ways that we haven't done before. So I thank you for listening to me, and I'd be delighted to answer questions or take feedback on the approach of the topics, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, President Kaler, and I want to be sure the the listening community is aware that coming out of our retreat, Vice Chair of the Board Powell and Regent Rocha both stepped up to take on an informal role of helping advise this process, working directly with President Kaler and Chief of Staff Stedland. So I'm going to call on Regent Rocha first, and I think he's got some comments, and then Regent Powell, I know Regent Omari has asked, and bring in any other conversation after that. But let's start with you, Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is excellent. Thank you.
Mr.
President Kaler.
Can we be sure that the minutes reflect that act?
Regent Powell.
I agree with my colleague, Regent Rocha, but I have one other tiny tidbit to offer President Kaler. And just in our discussion with the President and with his team, we recognize that the university is a very large place. The plan is very ambitious. It's not really possible to have a meeting on a day where we put to bed the strategic plan, and hence the timetable that the President has laid out. This really is intended to be an ongoing discussion. At most board meetings, there will be a discussion of a meaty and important strategic topic, and over the course of the year, it rolls up into the comprehensive plan. But, you know, I think it's important to recognize that we need lots of time to do this, and it will occur over many meetings.
Thank you, Regent Powell. Regent Omari?
Yes, thank you, Chair McMillan. First and foremost, thank you both, Regent Powell and Regent Rocha, for the work, and President and staff. Few observations. One is, in an ideal world, students and diversity and inclusion would always be the first thought in everything that we do. But the reality is that's not the case. And I noticed that the steering committee has no representation from the Office of Equity and Diversity or students. So I would encourage some more thoughtfulness around that. And then the second one is actually a question really about how we're defining public engagement in this conversation of outreach and public engagement. I think of public engagement more from a scholarly perspective in the term not just simply service or public service in terms of our mission. And so I'm wondering how we're conceptualizing of the term public engagement, and if it's thought of in the way that I do, I don't know that it should be necessarily connected under the outreach and public engagement purview, particularly with the Vice President Kramer in that realm.
President Kaler.
Thank you, Chair McMillan, Regent Omari. First off, the diversity lens is critically important to what we do, and all of the leaders maintain that as a high priority and an important view. Given the transition in OED, we did not include Vice President Albert in that group, but your point is well taken, and I will come back and address that. Secondly, none of these 5 areas can be individually untangled from the other 4. So when we talk about outreach and community engagement, it is embedded in every single one of those things that we do. So it's outreach to the public and to public officials, which is Vice President Kramer's job, but it's also engagement in teacher education as we provide leadership for public school districts across the state of Minnesota. It's the Minnesota Cup as we engage the entrepreneurial community in Minnesota. So every one of these will have a connection and an entanglement with others. So it's pretty clear what our teaching mission is, it's pretty clear what our research mission is, and everything else falls into an engagement and an outreach. So it's all of the above. We put it in because it's got to go somewhere on a piece of paper in this particular bucket, but it's very broad, it's very engaged, it's many-dimensional, and involves touch points from nearly everything that we do.
Follow-up, Regent Omari.
Yes, thank you, Chair McMillan. Students, any thoughts on the comment that I made about the students and steering committee?
President Kaler.
Involvement.
you know, we can, Regional Maury Chair McMillan, we look for the student voice in all that we do, but I feel at the steering committee level, we're adequately able to listen to that input, which will be gained as we work through the 5 pillars of this plan without a student seat on that particular committee.
I might also note that we have the ongoing student representative input here at the board process, but Regional Maury, did you have something else? Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to respond to that a little bit. I appreciate what Regional Maury is saying, and you know, because in the conversation it may not be perceived as being paramount. A couple of observations from my standpoint. You know, there are a lot of folks that have important input that are not part of that group, because I don't necessarily see that group as being the source of all input. You know, there's not a regent on there. There's not, you know, you can identify a lot of folks. I see the steering committee as the committee that's responsible to the president. He's, you know, they're accountable to him. Whereas if we put a student in, believe me, I'm pretty driven toward ensuring students are part of all processes, and certainly they'll have that obligation to communicate with them. But a student wouldn't be accountable to him in that way. So I think it's really a function of what the steering committee is charged to do, as opposed to does it constitute all of the input that's going into this process. I also, you know, I also think that at least the way I conceptualize it is every member of that steering committee, as every member of the administration, and as the president just pointed out, has responsibility for diversity and ensuring a community opportunity. I don't know that we check that box by making sure someone with a title is in that group. I hold them all accountable for that, and so to the extent that they draw on that office for input, I think that that's essential. But I think that I don't want to sort of create the expectation that you always have to have the title there to ensure that that input's there. But I think your point is aptly made, and certainly the president and the board, you know, we would all agree with you fully.
Very good. Thank you, Regent Rocha, and thank you, President Kaler, for the tremendous amount of effort that this reflects. I heard Regent Rocha use a word that I emphasized in my opening remarks, and with the reference of that word driven, we're going to move on in our agenda here. And I'd like to invite the President and CEO of the University of Minnesota Foundation, Kathy Schmidlkopper, and the university's great friends and wonderful co-chairs of what you're going to hear about here, John and Nancy Lindahl, to the table, and we'll turn this over to President Kaler for some opening remarks as they get seated.
Thank you, Chair McMillan. We do this about once every 18 years, and I don't want to take any thunder from the presenters, so I will yield the floor to them.
Very good. Proceed.
Thank you, President Kaler. Good morning, Chair McMillan, Regents. On behalf of the University of Minnesota Foundation, I appreciate this time to highlight the incredible impact of philanthropy and private support at the University of Minnesota. Today is much more than an annual report. It is a pivotal moment in the life of this institution as we take the wraps off the 3rd system-wide fundraising campaign in university history. I am joined this morning by 2 very special guests, John and Nancy Lindahl, who are the dedicated co-chairs of our campaign. They represent the hundreds of campaign volunteer leaders who are some of the university's most generous and dedicated supporters. And many of them also serve on the Foundation's Board of Trustees. The Foundation is a nonprofit organization governed by a 41-member board with 1/4 of our trustees appointed by the University Board of Regents. Some of our trustees are here with us this morning, and we thank them for their service and leadership. 3 regents and the president also serve as trustees, so thank you, Regent Beeson, Regent Cohen, Regent Lucas, and President Kaler. We deeply appreciate your engagement and service. A focus on the future is ingrained in the Foundation's vision and mission, and we are privileged to work with donors from every corner of the state and around the world. We work collaboratively across the university system, representing the students and faculty across our campuses in Duluth, Morris, Crookston, Rochester, and the Twin Cities. And now that you've had a little bit of a glimpse of what's under the hood, let's tell you what this vehicle is now built to do. Today, September 8th, 2017 marks the official public launch of the largest philanthropic initiative in university history, Driven, the University of Minnesota campaign. We are pleased to announce the university's goal of raising $4 billion by the close of this campaign. It's a big goal, and it's already producing big returns for university students, our community, and the state. As the foundation, we help lead the campaign and work with every campus, college, and unit to achieve their own goals. But make no mistake, this is the university's campaign, one that will reach far beyond our campus borders and change the lives of generations to come. You may ask, why is the university launching the Driven campaign to the public today? Something we have not done in 18 years. A system-wide fundraising campaign unifies and benefits the university and state in several important ways. It unites our leaders and advocates both internally and externally, and provides the lens to clarify our priorities and highlight our key strengths and opportunities. It recommits all of us to the promise this university made to the state, and the outcome is more engagement and philanthropic support to create a margin of excellence, taking the university and Minnesota from good to great. The start of the Driven campaign corresponds with President Kaler's arrival in 2011, and university-wide campaign like ours include a focused period of planning, engaging leaders and volunteers, and securing early major gifts and commitments before launching to the public. We have crossed campus and academic boundaries to unite our faculty partners and leaders in establishing priorities and a compelling case for support. As we unveil Driven to the wider community today, we have completed year 6 of the campaign on the path to our goal of raising $4 billion. And like the 2 previous campaigns, this will be the largest in university history. Driven's fundraising goal puts us among the top 4 campaigns for our nation's public universities, an ambitious yet fitting goal for a university of our caliber and capacity for changing lives. Here you see the campaign progress towards our $4 billion goal. We just celebrated our 3 best years of fundraising on record, and this past year was our 2nd highest total in history. And thanks to the stewardship of dollars invested over generations and current use gifts, donor gifts made available a record $237 million to the university this year, all to be used as they directed to fund students, faculty, research programs, and so many more strategic initiatives. Currently, 99% of our gifts come in with a specific designation from the donor, and a third are estate commitments or deferred gifts that will flow from donors to the university in decades to come. As we launch the campaign to the public today, we have already raised $2.5 billion, over 62% of our goal. Industry experts recommend going public when a campaign has reached 50 to 60% of its goal, so we are in excellent position for today's launch. Higher education campaigns are about building private investments into the university. That means industry campaign counting includes not only the philanthropic gifts raised by our development community, but also the private grants brought in through the research powerhouse of our entrepreneurial faculty. This chart shows the philanthropic gifts raised in maroon and the private grants secured by our faculty in gold. Funds raised will flow to students in the form of scholarships, fellowships, and support for real-world learning, internships, study abroad, and more. Since the campaign start, donors have established more than 700 undergraduate and 270 graduate scholarship and fellowship funds. Gifts will also help attract and retain leading faculty experts, deliver needed research funding, and support productive facilities for learning and research. The wider community will also feel Driven's impact through the gifts that support everything from the new Bell Museum and Athletes Village to our healthcare facilities and clinics, and centers that serve the community, like the Institute of Child Development and the Raptor Center. Thanks to our supporters, we can chart a course to a better future in Minnesota and across the globe. No one better represents the vision and aspirations of our generous donors than our campaign co-chairs here with me today. I'd like to invite John and Nancy Lindahl to highlight the university's campaign priorities.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Working with university leaders, we have identified 5 areas where the University of Minnesota can make a direct, enduring difference, and where we know this campaign can have the greatest impact. All of the images you see today are of students, faculty, patients, and initiatives already benefiting from private support. It's befitting to begin with driving a Minnesota plan for innovation, something that historically been a key strength of the university and something I have seen firsthand in my partnerships with growing businesses in Minnesota. Generated, inspired, marketable ideas requires the right incubator, a place where proven experts and bright young minds meet, collaborate, test products, and start new ventures. The University of Minnesota is a center of invention where new ideas create a clear and widespread economic value. Since President Kaler's arrival in 2011, we have seen a record number of startups launched through university research and a significant growth in industry partnerships. And our Crookston campus continues to win accolades for its leadership in online learning and collaboration. Campaign supporters will fuel students who thrive in a global economy, collaborating among many disciplines, and even deeper engagement between industry and the university. Pictured here, conducting market research in Bangalore, Kaylee Braze spent a semester engineering a way to produce clean water. She's one of hundreds of students from 11 different U of M colleges who've teamed up to find solutions for some of the world's biggest problems, part of the university's new Grand Challenges curriculum. Thanks to donors, these students have the chance to tackle real-world problems from an interdisciplinary perspective, and some have even launched new businesses like Kaylee's. This leads now to a second priority area, protecting and sustaining agriculture, food, and water. Our university footprint serves as a microcosm of the world. We have campuses located on America's greatest lake, its greatest river, its greatest prairie, as well as urban centers. This enables firsthand research into some of the planet's biggest challenges around water, food, energy, and climate. Our campus setting, like the harbor near UMD, creates a living laboratory that invites members of the larger community to join in finding solutions. The University of Minnesota Morris continues to be recognized for its deep commitment to environmental sustainability. Through a combination of biomass, wind, and solar energy, the campus generates more energy than it uses. Campaign supporters will help the university increase food safety and security, protect our natural resources, and minimize the impact of climate change. As we have seen devastating effects of flooding in Texas and South Asia, we owe it to the world to use our expertise to help find solutions that will mitigate and prevent future disasters. An example of a future leader in this area is Chris Farr, who benefited from a private scholarship while earning his degree in agriculture and food business. A letter winning of the U.S. wrestling team, he was also recognized as All Big Ten. Chris grew up on a hog farm in LeSueur, Minnesota, where he learned the value of hard work and being a good steward of the land. This fall, he will study land and atmospheric science in the grad school after completing his summer internship at Land O'Lakes. Chris carries the lessons he's learned on the farm into his career. Chris's comments are, "We have a world population to feed, and we have to do that responsibly." And speaking of homegrown local talent, I'd really like to turn this over to my wonderful wife, Nance.
Doesn't say that every day.
Ouch.
Thank you, John. The university is a powerful force for change, and that's why it is a priority to provide a place of opportunity for everyone. University teaching and learning foster people's capacity to reach their full potential by removing social, emotional, physical, and economic obstacles to success, to transform our local and global communities into places of opportunity for all. We will advocate for equity, justice, and opportunity through programs in law, public affairs, and political science. And we are harnessing our resources to help to close the achievement gap in Minnesota schools. Our campaign supporters will also help to enrich our collective quality of life by bringing theater, dance, art, and music into communities statewide. Many corporate foundation and community partners are also joining forces with the university to improve lives beyond the boundaries of our campuses. This past year, the Robina Foundation provided the law school with its largest gift in history to fund the James H. Binger Center for New Americans. Since it opened in 2013, the center has provided immigrants and refugees with needed legal services while giving U of M law students valuable real-world experience. Their work dovetails with the work of the College of Liberal Arts Immigration History Research Center. The university is tapping its cross-disciplinary expertise to play a key role at a time when immigration is at the center of the national and global conversation. I am also pleased to highlight a campaign priority that has touched our own family: accelerating advances in health. The university has a long and proud history of medical firsts and healthcare innovation. Today, our top medical experts in interdisciplinary collaboration continue to deliver new approaches to research, treatment, and care. Our impact continues to grow thanks to excellent teaching research on our Minneapolis, Duluth, and Rochester campuses, and high-quality care facilities that treat more than 1 million every year. A U of M diploma hangs on the wall of the vast majority of healthcare providers across the state, and we have the state's only schools of dentistry, pharmacy, and veterinary medicine. Our campaign supporters will help the university improve quality of life for all by promoting health equity and access, preventing and treating diseases, and using team-focused models to educate our future healthcare workforce. 9-year-old Zuzia from Poland is an inspiring example of the university's true impact. Her rare skin disease meant that even the slightest touch gave her terrible wounds that made it impossible for her to eat normally, take baths, or even wear tights. Through social media, her parents learned about a first-in-the-world clinical trial at the university's Masonic Children's Hospital that offered her a chance for a cure. They set a goal of raising the money to travel to Minnesota and even allowed Zuzia to go on television to tell her story. This is what she said: "There is a doctor in America. He is magical. He has a way to treat kids like me. He can give me new skin." Within 55 days, the family met their goal. They made the journey to Masonic Children's Hospital and Dr. Jacob Toller for Zuzia's treatment, and we are happy to report that she has responded very well. Gifts from donors have been critical to funding new ways to halt diseases like hers. Thanks to her breakthrough treatment here, Zuzia can finally eat, take baths, play with her sister, and yes, just like other little girls, she can wear tights. Now I'd like to turn it back to Kathy for an overview of our last and most important campaign priority, our students.
Thank you, Nancy and John. As a recipient of a private scholarship myself, especially when my family needed it most, I am honored to highlight our top priority that is a cornerstone of our campaign: elevating a world-class student experience. Students remain at the center of our mission and embody our focus on the future. Surrounded by thought leaders and mentors on all 5 campuses, they learn and grow in ways they never imagined. Our campaign helps to fund scholarships and fellowships that provide an affordable education for all deserving students. And we encourage them to take advantage of all that campus life has to offer, whether it's through internships, study abroad, research, volunteering, campus organizations, or athletics. Their activities prepare them to contribute to their communities. Philanthropy helps us provide students with more real-world experience and hands-on learning. We transform their lives so they can transform their world. I'd like to share the story of College of Liberal Arts graduate Fata Ukoi and the special family who supports her. She was just 7 years old on September 11th, 2001. But as a participant in the Tom Burnett Advanced Leadership Program, she feels a profound connection to the hero who helped take control of Flight 93. Tom Burnett Jr. was a U of M grad and a loving dad who switched to an earlier flight that day so he could get home to his twins on the first day of kindergarten. After hearing that hijacked flights had just hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, Tom was among a brave group of passengers who took over their flight and brought it down in an open field to prevent it from hitting its planned target, the U.S. Capitol building. His grieving family received an outpouring of support for his leadership and sacrifice, and they looked for a meaningful way to respond. They funded a program in Tom's name here at the University of Minnesota for seniors to develop their own leadership skills. As a student leader on campus, Fata was nominated for this program where she was paired with a mentor to work on a series of leadership challenges. Tom's sister Mary says the program is exactly what her brother would have wanted, helping young leaders pay it forward. And Fata, who grew up in Liberia during the country's civil wars, aims to do just that. She is studying human rights in graduate school and hopes to become the type of leader who Tom would like to see in the world. So you can tell, it's a privilege to tell the stories of how our work truly transforms lives. As we end today's report, I'd like to acknowledge the value of your partnerships as Regents. On behalf of the Foundation and the entire university development community, thank you. Thank you for all that you do and your tremendous engagement with this university. I'd like to especially thank President Kaler and his wife Karen for their dedication to telling the university stories and meeting with so many of our donors and prospects. We invite you as Regents to be part of the Driven journey in raising your aspirations for this great institution. So please join us on Gateway Plaza at noon for the university's campaign launch celebration. And now, John, Nancy, and I would like to close with a video that captures the excitement and the impact of Driven.
Driven. We are driven by a power deep within every one of us. It's our inspiration and our motivation. It's the fire in our belly, the light in our eyes, igniting our passion. Drive. We couldn't get anywhere without it, but there's more to a vehicle than its engine. Once we identify what drives us, let us also ask, what guides us on our journey? How do we chart our course? To set our sights on new possibilities and new horizons, we need a steady point of reference by which to navigate. The North Star is just such a point, forever lighting our way. The University of Minnesota is our North Star. As we travel to wherever our courage and curiosity take us, we bring with us our values, resourcefulness, resilience, a common belief in opportunity for all, a united commitment to being a powerful force for change. Although our journeys may shoot for the stars, they begin by knowing where we come from. That foundational place is rooted to us as the soil in the land. The Morrill Act of 1862 called for selling public lands to fund land-grant universities, specifically for the benefit of the working and industrious classes. Because the young state was in its economic infancy, the U of M was designed with both research and land-grant functions, creating a cross-disciplinary institution from its very inception. Today, the light from our North Star emanates from all 5 campuses to span the world, illuminating innovations and solutions that address the world's greatest challenges. Stars have forever been a source of unending inquiry, inspiration, and guidance for both scientists and poets. And for more than 150 years, the University of Minnesota has built a galaxy of stars, vibrant, inspired, and adventurous. They tell us the stories of those who have made their mark on our state and our world. These constellations comprise scholars, athletes, artists, scientists, healers, public servants, inventors, entrepreneurs, and explorers. These individuals are rooted in the university's culture, traditions, history, and pride. Today's rising stars are ascending to even greater heights. For generations, the University of Minnesota has been the laboratory and launching pad for dreams and aspirations. These generations have repaid the favor through their accomplishments, addressing the world's grand challenges and making it a better place for Minnesotans and all people. Our university is a place where great minds foster diversity of thought and cross disciplines to elevate research and results. Our North Star lights the way for young hearts and minds to fulfill their dreams. It's a promise this university has made for generations and will for generations to come. Wherever our journeys may take us, the University of Minnesota is our eternal guiding light, our Northern Star.
I think this is a perfect place to end. Chair McMillan, Regents, and President Kaler, we look forward to sharing this journey with all of you as we take the next 4 years to introduce you to the adventuresome, the generous, and the driven. Thank you.
Very good.
Kathy, John, and Nancy, that's hard to come up with words that do justice to what you just presented, but remarkable, inspiring, emotionally touching, and driving us forward come to my mind. And Kathy, we've been lucky since you chose to join us for your incredible visionary and energetic leadership, and what a capstone now to bring to this. John and Nancy, it's hard to find friends that stand in the same shoes you two do at this university. You give every day, and now you're going to give even more. We're grateful. And noting the importance that we get to the outside events, I'll just throw that out with my colleagues here. And before I open it up to the floor or the group for input, I'd like to call on Regent Peggy Lucas to share her thoughts about the resolution that's in your materials.
That was unbelievable. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I enthusiastically move approval of a resolution that endorses Driven, the University of Minnesota campaign. Because our university is one of only 5 in the nation with schools in engineering, medicine, veterinary medicine, business, law, public policy, and agriculture, we are uniquely positioned to lead cross-disciplinary efforts that can and will address the grand challenges of our time. The campaign will help ensure that the ongoing impact of this great university in the changing world moves on. I believe that Driven has set its sights high, and rightfully so. I strongly support the campaign and would like to express the board's appreciation to the campaign leadership, volunteers, and over 200,000 donors for their contributions during the first 6 years of this campaign.
Second.
Thank you, Regent Lucas and Regent Omari. Now I'd like to invite comments and perhaps questions, and begin with Regent Simmons.
Thank you. I have no question. I do have a comment. You can undertake, but you don't succeed in a $4 billion campaign unless you have leadership. And we have it every place we need it. The foundation, the people of the foundation are just an extraordinary pool of talent. They're a machine that can pull this off. They embraced it, and they'll succeed. You can't do this without leadership of a president, and a president who's taking the university up in excellence and in whom people believe. And you can't do it without leadership from the Lindahls. They are taking their stature and influence in a big community called the United States, maybe the world, and their own time, and personal talent, and of course their own fiscal assets. What you're doing leads to success, and it inspires us, not only in our own personal philanthropy, but in our roles governing the university. So I salute you. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Simmons. Regent Beeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd certainly echo Regent Lucas and Regent Simmons' comments. I would just, John, as Nancy's always reminded you, you can't retire either. You understand why that is. You've got 2 jobs to do for a period of time here. You know, I want to wind the clock back, because there's probably some people on the board that don't know the fact that you also chaired the TCF Bank Stadium, and we're about ready to receive a fabulous gift, another gift from TCF Bank. And if you and TCF Bank hadn't made the commitment when you did, that stadium would not have happened.
We're richly blessed in so many ways. Other thoughts from the board before we vote on the resolution before us? Regent Anderson.
I wasn't going to say anything, and I'd like to consider myself a pretty level-headed person. I don't get too emotional. But when I think back to the people who donated research money here years and years ago, so that I might have a chance like that 5-year-old, I'm virtually speechless and choked up, and I thank the University of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Anderson. Well, it seems something seems wrong with calling for a vote right now, but the world of governance must go on, and we have a truly public launch of this, and a lot of people outside on the plaza ready to go, so as much as it seems cold and business-driven for me to do so, I'm going to call for a vote to adopt the resolution in your materials that Regent Lucas so nicely introduced. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Outstanding. We are launched. Thank you. Okay.
Deep breaths.
Yeah, deep breaths. I'm going to now turn to Regent Anderson for a report on the finance and the inaugural meeting of the Finance and Operations Committee yesterday, where we've got a couple of action items to progress.
Okay. Thank you, Regent Chair McMillan. The Finance Committee report of September 8th, 2017. We had some action items. The committee considered one action item this month, the consent report. You will recall that the amendment to the sponsorship rights agreement with TCF was separated from the consent report included in the docket materials. I will first move the rest of the consent report and then the amendment to TCF Bank Stadium agreement.
All right, there's a motion from the committee.
Second.
Very good. Discussion?
Second.
Hearing none, vote on the approval of the consent report from Finance and Operations. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Regent Anderson?
The committee then voted to recommend approval of the amendments to the title sponsorship rights agreement with TCF Financial Corporation and TCF National Bank for the TCF Stadium. I move approval of the amendment to the title sponsorship rights agreement with TCF Financial Corporation and the TCF National Bank.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Regent Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, just a brief comment in regard to the TCF contribution. I can't begin to visualize or understand the amount of work that went into raising that money. And so I want to publicly thank the President, Athletic Director Coyle. I understand PJ Fleck was involved, and certainly Twin City Federal. You see what happened? I'm sorry, TCF. It used to be Twin City Federal. But I look at it this way. These corporations, businesses, and individuals could give their money in 1,000 different places. But they chose to give it to the University of Minnesota and for this particular purpose at the football field. So I want to commend all who worked on this and spent time and effort. I know CFO Brian Burnett was also instrumental in this effort as well. But it does more than that, members of the board. It sets a new standard for other companies, corporations, and individuals. It gains their interest. And as the Lindahls have provided leadership for the Driven campaign, it sets a new standard. And as I said about the president, I feel we're on the upswing. We're in a good place, in a positive place, this university, and this particular donation from TCF is a part of that. So publicly, I want to thank them and all who have donated to the Athletes Village project, as well as university-wide.
Thank you, Regent Johnson. Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I concur with all the sentiments expressed by Regent Johnson. I think that the fact that we have people that are continuing to pursue these kinds of opportunities, and whether in an outright donation or whether in a contractual arrangement, I think that that's really important. As I expressed yesterday, without walking through the entire concept, and I've got a couple questions, and this maybe shows the salience of Regent Simmons' comments earlier about perspective between Thursday and Friday on different topics. And maybe, I don't know who the right source is for this information, maybe it's Director Steves. with the funds that are coming in, does our policy then provide that the disposition of those funds comes before the board for approval?
Mr. Steves.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Regent Rocha, I believe that they would, through the course of the approval of the operating budget, be in front of this board. I guess it would partly depend on how they were used, and maybe this is a better question for the President.
President Kaler.
Thank you, Chair McMillan. That was very nicely punted to continue. Mr. Steves. Our policy is that revenue accrued from facilities that are operated by a given unit remain with that unit. So our policy would indicate that this additional revenue associated with TCF Stadium would go to athletics, and indeed in conversations with TCF they recognize that it is a gift or a naming arrangement that would benefit Athletes Village. I believe mechanically the way we would handle that is that we would receive funds into central reserves and then allocate those funds to the athletic department. But I'm looking for Vice President Burnett if I can hand the ball off one more time. I think that is correct, though, Brian.
Senior Vice President Burnett, while you're getting seated there, you'll know we also created special space for the administration team so they could quickly come to the table going forward. So you've now
very handy.
deployed that.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, and I don't want to belabor. Mr. President and members of the board, Regent Rocha, with all of the discussions that took place over many months with TCF was their intent to support the Athletes Village project. If they elect to take the extension option within 3 years of this month, which is what the agreement says, that $4 million would, in their mind, flow to help support the debt service of Athletes Village. That was the way it was proposed by the CEO, the Chief Financial Officer, much like the $8 million upfront payment. All of the budgets for Athletes Village, as well as the Department of Intercollegiate Athletics, comes to this board. So that would be reported to you if they made that decision, and we would show that to you through the budget process. But I don't believe, Mr. President, that if there's any requirement that it flow through central reserves. It's just directed straight to the Athletes Village project to help support the financing. And that's a project that this board has approved and challenged the administration and the athletic department to raise private funds to help support.
Thank you, Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the answer. Again, when we talk about the $8 million component, that's pretty. For me, that's a great opportunity. I just think that as a matter of policy, long-term policy, and this board's obligation to preserve the long-term future. There's a big difference between someone giving money now to finance the current project versus doing it as a quid pro quo against an asset that really doesn't belong to this generation. That's my concern, is that by freezing the ability of the university 13 years from now and extending for another 10 years beyond that, their ability to maximize their revenue, because it's not indexed, it will not be increasing in any way. I think that's a pretty major shift and something that we as a board ought to talk about, because we could certainly right now balance our budget by telling people with newborns that for $10,000 they'll have 4 free years of tuition for their children someday. We get the $10,000 now, and then educating them is a future generation's problem. And to me that's a challenge. And so to the extent that we were to put the $4 million aside in an investment to be retained until such time as the extension begins, that would be logical to me. That would make sense to me. I don't know that there's appetite on the board to do that. Unfortunately, that leaves, and this is also one of the challenges with a review action in the same month, is I don't really have a chance to explore this, but sort of overnight as I'm kind of considering this challenge, because a no vote says more than I want to say. I support what everybody's put together. I support the partnership, but fundamentally I have a hard time. It's no different than deficit spending at the federal level. We'll let children and grandchildren pay for the resources that we use today, and I think that's a dangerous path. Maybe it happens so infrequently that it's not, worth the time, but as a function of policy, I just have a problem with that. So my intent was to bring a motion to amend to provide that the $4 million be held in that way. I'm not going to sort of drag the board through that conversation. I would ask that when, if and when this is exercised by our partner in this matter, that we have an opportunity to at least revisit the issue at that point. If I still remain in the minority, so be it. But to that extent, I want to express that grave concern about again taking future resources and converting them into immediate cash. I think that's a challenge.
Regent Rocha, I want to reflect and honor your perspective about intergenerational commitments, if I can call them those, or transgenerational commitments. But and I also want to say in a broader sense, and I know that President Kaler and the administration are very, very clear about I won't say disdain, but I do not like review action items, recognizing there are commercial circumstances where they become almost a necessity, but they should always be the exception rather than the rule. And I think over the last couple of years we've moved in that direction. So other comments from the board before we call for a vote? Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I could be wrong here, but my understanding is that there are approvals that need to be given by the NCAA for us to fulfill the full terms of the agreement. Is that correct?
There are such approvals. I'd turn to Senior Vice President Burnett to explain those, Big Ten or NCAA.
Mr. Chairman, Regent Hsu, we cleared all those hurdles with the NCAA and the Big Ten through the process and wouldn't have brought it to you had those not been cleared. And so we feel very confident that we will be in full compliance with any of the rules by executing this agreement.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very good. That motion carries. Other business from operations and finance. Regent Anderson?
That concludes my report.
Very good. I'm going to turn to Regent Powell in the absence of our chair of the Audit and Compliance Committee for a report.
Thank you, Chair McMillan. There were no action items for the Audit and Compliance Committee this month. There were two important discussion items. First, the committee reviewed the charters that guide the internal audit work. Chief Auditor Klatt presented changes to the Office of Internal Audit Charter, and the committee supported the proposed changes. In preparation for Governance and Policy's formal review of the Audit Committee Charter, the committee provided preliminary feedback that will guide changes to that policy. The committee also discussed the process and plan for updating the university's institutional risk profile, which was developed in 2014. Many regents have expressed interest in updating the profile, and that it be a major topic for the committee in the year ahead. At the October meeting, we will review the institutional risk principles that were endorsed by the board in 2011, and later the committee will engage in discussions with university administrators about significant risks facing the university, in addition to addressing governance-level institutional risks. Finally, the committee will discuss implementing risk mitigation plans and the oversight responsibility for those plans. And that's my report.
Thank you, Regent Powell. Turning to Regent Beeson on behalf of the Litigation Review Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Litigation Review Committee held a special meeting on Thursday, July 20th, and a regular meeting yesterday. At these meetings, resolutions were considered and adopted that authorize the closing of the meetings to discuss matters subject to attorney-client privilege. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Beeson. Regent Omari on behalf of Mission Fulfillment.
Thank you, Chair McMillan. We had one action item and several discussion items. I'll take the action item first. It was the consent report, and the committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of the consent report, which included academic program additions, changes, and discontinuations, an academic unit name change, and conferral of tenure for outside hires. I move approval of the consent report.
That motion's very good. Moved by the committee, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. items?
Yes, Chair McMillan, we had robust conversations about the report that I just mentioned on the undergraduate and graduate academic changes. We had a nice conversation about system-wide enrollment and the importance of that as we move forward with our work over the upcoming years. In addition, we had a wonderful discussion on the ever-important role of university libraries. We highlighted that today at this meeting as well. And lastly, a conversation about DACA and its implications for our community that President Kaler has mentioned earlier today. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Regent Omari, and thanks to you and Regent Anderson in particular for tackling the combination of what were major committees into two behemoths. So I mentioned that, and I'm saying it again because the board's appreciative. Regent Rocha, the governance and policy pretty fresh in our minds here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because the committee leadership team of Regent Beeson and myself cannot yet be trusted with action items, there were none before the committee this month, and that concludes my report.
I don't believe there's a trust issue there, but thanks for putting a smile on our collective faces here. And lastly, in terms of scheduled business, I call on Regent Anderson to provide a report of the Special Oversight Committee.
Thank you, Chair McMillan. The Special Oversight Committee met on August 16, 2017 to review a joint report and recommendations on Title IX and athletic discipline practices. The report was prompted by a highly visible circumstance that brought significant attention to the topic of sexual misconduct. The Special Oversight Committee unanimously approved a resolution which has been distributed to each of you. It acknowledges receipt of the joint report and charges the President to review and evaluate its recommendations, develop a plan to implement changes where appropriate, and report to the board on progress and implementation plans no later than February 2018. I want to emphasize, however, that after reviewing this incident, the external reviewers also noted a number of opportunities for the university to improve. We will continue to evaluate actions taken in this matter to inform what we do going forward. As we pursue improvements to process and procedures related to Title IX, we have an obligation to our students and the entire university community to ensure that our processes are both clear and consistently applied. I move adoption of the Special Oversight Committee resolution.
Seconded. Very good. Moved and seconded, and open it up for comment here or questions. Regent Swigum, as a member of the committee, thank you for your service, along with Regent Lucas as well.
Mr. Chairman, just very quickly in regards to the Oversight Special Committee, I think it's important to recognize that for us as well as the public, well, this was a very difficult and challenging time in our recent university history, being just last fall. At least according to the outside counsel that we hired and the report that they gave to us, that there were, it's important to recognize that while decisions are made that you may agree with or disagree with, that there were no laws, there were no procedures, there were no policies, there were no rules that were broken, that they were all followed, at least according to the report we received from the outside counsel. And I think that's important to know and certainly part of the resolution.
Thank you. Regent Simmons.
Thank you. I really appreciate the work of the special committee. All three of you, thank you. Because the review, the external review did include the Board of Regents, I think while I like the resolution and will support it, I don't think we should turn to the President to look at Board of Regents' performance going forward, and that's a task for us. And I don't know if that comes to Governance Committee, any place, but I just would like to say we shouldn't ask the President to tell us what to do differently. That comes to us. So I'll just defer to the Chair on how we do that. And then the second comment I make is I think we need to stay tuned because the Secretary of Education, DeVos, has changed or is changing things that will affect how we define and proceed looking at sexual misconduct, and that may have implications for us going forward.
This is an iterative process, and there is considerable room for improvement here, and we will continue to pursue that. Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. in response to, I think, a bit to Regent Svigum's comments, as I read the resolution indicates that we are receiving the report, that a vote in favor of the resolution does not necessarily endorse the finding. And so that I'm going to vote in favor of the resolution that we are receiving the report that was presented to the committee, but I'm just concerned that your comments would expand that beyond the receipt of the report into an endorsement of the findings at the present time. So I just want to be on record with that. Thank you.
And I'll clarify, the board's chair's perspective is the same as yours. This is not an endorsement, it's a reception of it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Regent Swigum.
Just very quickly, I said that we've received the findings of the outside counsel. Somebody else may have found something different.
Right.
But at least according to those, that investigation, I feel very comfortable that procedures and policy was followed.
All right. Not hearing further, Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Chair McMillan. I read the reports and I noted some inaccuracies, and I'm wondering what the procedure and process would be to correct those.
Regent Anderson, do you have enlightenment on that topic, or I can turn to Director Steves as well on what process will be going forward to implement what you referenced in your preamble to the resolution?
I guess I would say that, again, we are receiving a report, we're receiving a report from outside counsel. They interviewed many people. Maybe there's an inaccuracy in there. I don't know exactly how we will discuss that, but I think that will be discussed at some point in time, and maybe I need to turn it over to the chair or Mr. Steves to answer that. I don't know.
Director Steves, do you want to? Sure. I can add some color to that. So,
Mr. Chair and Regent Hsu, with regard to the report that this resolution is receiving, it indicates and it charges the President with reviewing those recommendations and coming back to the board with plans for implementation and a progress report on steps that have already been taken. And so certainly the board would have an additional opportunity to discuss all of those recommendations and plans to implement them. With regard to some of the advice that has been provided by outside counsel, certainly through the General Counsel's office, there can be opportunities for continuing to have that conversation.
And as your chair, it's my full intention to make sure that we have ample process, time, and opportunity. And to Regent Simmons' comment, we won't look to anybody else to guide our own perspective on this in terms of how we implement and go forward. So that would be my understanding. We don't have the process completely ironed out yet, but we'll work closely with General Counsel, as Mr. Steves said, to do so. Regent Rocha, last thought here.
I would move the question.
Very good. I'm going to call for a vote. I don't know if we need to. It looks like the discussion's wound down, but thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. The report of the Special Oversight Committee is received. Is there any old business to come before the board? None? Any new business before the board? Seeing none and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. The meeting of the University's Board of Regents is adjourned, and we will see most, if not all of you, on the plaza below.